We need civics. Our society needs civics, our communities need civics, our classroom needs civics, and without civics, does anything even exist? Every person who graduates from a New Hampshire school has the knowledge, tools, and confidence they need to engage in the system. I wasn't raised in a household where we talked about politics or we talked about, my parents were amazingly hard workers who were blue collar workers. They went to work, they came home. I'm just a washed up jock. That was my life in high school. And so I didn't really think about larger issues. And then somehow, some way, I just got brought down this path. And that's why I said, you may not be wanting to be involved at this age, but don't give up on it.
Hi, my name's Owen Samos, and welcome to Youth in the Booth. Today, my guest is Allyson Ryder. How are you doing?
Great, thank you, Owen.
So, for the people at home who might not know, Allyson Ryder is the Executive Director of NH Civics. New Hampshire Civics aids people in understanding how democracy works, how to find the facts, and how to be a good and active citizen. They are committed to nonpartisanship and provide free and accessible programming to people of all ages with a primary focus on K-12 classrooms. You've also worked in higher education at UNH in the Office of Community, Equity, and Diversity, and was a fellow for NH Lessons, and worked for Leadership New Hampshire. You've been serving in nonprofit and public sectors across Northern New England for your whole career. So welcome to the show, Allyson.
Thanks, Owen. I'm excited to be here. And in my kind of hometown area, I grew up a little north of here in Boscawen, but Concord was kind of where I hung out. So glad to be back here.
Oh, it's great to be here. I've lived in Concord my whole life, so I don't know much different. But so as I said at the very beginning, you are the Executive Director of New Hampshire Civics, and I'd love to hear more about what the organization does.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty new to the role, so I started at the start of the new year. So the bell rang for 2024, and I started my new role at New Hampshire Civics, and it's been an amazing journey. New Hampshire Civics is an organization that, as you noted, works across the entire state. So although we are located here in Concord, we work with schools across the state of New Hampshire to encourage civic education in the classrooms. We've noted that, unfortunately, there was a significant drop-off in civics education in the United States, essentially around the time of No Child Left Behind, but a little bit before that. I like to say that I am definitely a cuspy millennial, and it started about my generation. And we realized at New Hampshire Civics that we need civics. Our society needs civics, our communities need civics, our classroom needs civics, and without civics, does anything even exist? And so we work to try to make sure that people understand the importance of this, importance of understanding civics, importance of understanding the engagement, and what are the primary aspects of our democracy that make us who we are today.
Exactly. And when you talk about it, when we're understanding this idea of K-12 education, not having a full grasp on what is civic engagement, what is it to understand the political world. And for a lot of them, including myself, I just turned 18. I voted in New Hampshire primary, and I'm going to have the opportunity in just a few weeks to vote in the general election. Mm-hmm. But it's not something that everyone my age that I see in high school is particularly interested to do. And our democracy relies on every person coming out and voting. And I wanted to ask, since this has never happened really in American history, what would be the value of having a democracy in which almost all or everyone who is able to participate does?
Well, the irony of all of this, Owen, is that the United States was essentially one of the first countries formalized with a democracy. I mean, we can talk a little bit about the history of how Indigenous communities utilize a democracy in many of their cultural practices. And that's where the United States got their idea from. And I say that because we go back to the founding of this nation, and there is no other country that you can really look at it, a formalized foundations that committed to this model. Right. We've certainly worked to convert democracy across the globe. And also, in that spirit, we haven't always allowed everyone to vote. So we've kind of had this goal of having everyone vote while also recognizing that's not really been a reality for us yet. But we're still pretty young. We're only having, in 2026 will be the 250th signing of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, 250 is not that many years, right?
In comparison to other places around
absolutely.
The world,
I mean, I know you have deep roots to Portugal, which can go back thousands of years, right? And so I think we just have so much time to realize what that looks like, to have people fully realizing the power of democracy. But I've unfortunately seen us kind of go in the other direction, right?
Exactly.
We've seen people moving away from engaging, moving away from voting, and young people especially have never really been encouraged to participate, right? There's this notion that they don't know enough. How could they possibly go? But what I've seen and experienced in my role at Hampshire Civics, the young people are our future and they are paying attention to the issues. And so getting in and voting is critically important.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I do believe from what I've seen as well that it comes down a lot to do with the actual political side of it. It's not that they don't agree that maybe, yeah, voting's important. Some think that their vote doesn't matter. Some do. But, and I want to get your opinion on this, the idea that it's the political factor, it's the politicians, the people who run it, that kind of turn people off from voting.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. And the complexity of our system is the fact that in many ways we're a desegregated system, we're a disintegrated system where we have so many things happening at your community level and then your state level and then the national level. So there's just so many layers, and also some of those layers take over and just spread across everything else, right? And so, when you go to Europe, parliamentary is, they basically just pick a party and it's a very quick process. Here, it's very a multi-step process, right, Owen? And at the end of the day, what I think is challenging is that we can operate from a power over model or we can operate with a power with model. And for me, what I hope to see through our work at New Hampshire Civics or my own personal work is power with models. I mean, I cannot be me without you. You cannot be you without me, right? And we work together to create community, and we recognize that. Unfortunately, a power over model is very hierarchical. It's that you must do what I say because I'm in a different position and everything. And there's this, I think that is what I mostly see the tension. Yes, it's politics, but it's also this power over model. And unfortunately, the only way to overcome a power over model is to get more people engaged so that you can create a power with model.
Right, where the people themselves also have a significant say in what's happening.
Absolutely.
They're picking people because they genuinely believe in what they're doing. And people in politics have to, respect their own voters instead of assuming that they're going to win or picking or choosing or only
or going with
deciding different sides.
Special interest groups, right, that have money. And there's a lot to be said about money in politics. And, I'm not going to, that's a very complicated issue. And unfortunately, it exists at very real at the national level, somewhat at the state level, not really at all at the local level, right? So I always say, if you want to find the power of your voice, start local.
Exactly. I want to move on to something that more relates to the position that you have, especially with New Hampshire Civics, which allows teachers to let their students become more civically active. What are you hearing from teachers in New Hampshire right now about challenges and what their students need in this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the aspect of kind of what I had alluded to earlier about the No Child Left Behind and the standardized testing and what that really means. And because 87%, I think, give or take, of our students are educated in public, non-chartered schools, so that's who we obviously hear the most from. I know that there are amazing models happening within private schools across the state, and there's a whole unique charter school model called the Micro Society out of Nashua, which is all civic engaged focused. So just for that clarity, at the teacher level, we mostly are hearing from public K through 12 teachers, and the complicated part is time, support from the community and the administration. Right. And, again, getting back to young people, there was a really amazing piece on another podcast that we have here in New Hampshire that talked about so much of our curriculum is shaped by students. And I don't think students understand that. But if you walked into a classroom tomorrow, Owen, and 5 of your friends said, we want to focus on civics to your social studies teacher, they're likely going to listen to you. Right? And so how do we even get young people to understand that this is important and when they speak up about it? That being said, that's mostly middle school and high school age, which I know is the mass majority. The elementary school's biggest issue is just time. There's only a certain amount of time, and finding age appropriate content. So what do you say to a 6, 7, 8-year-old?
Politics, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what I'd say, actually. I'm thinking about it. I don't know how I explain or tell to someone who, might not fully understand almost anything going on around them.
Right.
What is politics?
Right.
Who are politicians? What's voting? Right?
Absolutely.
What's that type of role that New Hampshire Civics plays in having to give that more simplistic understanding that sets the foundation for later, further, more complex understanding when they're ready?
Yeah, I think that once again, school is such a critical place of where these conversations can start. And, I know that's not where it can end. We need to have families talking about it. We need to have siblings talking about it. We need to have friends talking about it. We got to have business leaders talking about it, right? Everyone has to say that this is important, that, understanding how you navigate the systems is important. Understanding basic terminology is important. And I would say New Hampshire Civics overall, our New Hampshire's Kid Governor program, what I think is often overlooked about that program, and it only works for 5th graders. And we have over 3,000 students this year signed up to vote for their next New Hampshire's Kid Governor. But it's not just show up to the polls and watch an awesome video of your peers talking about an issue that matters to them. What's really cool too is they're very single issue focus, right? And we don't expect a 5th grader to have a portfolio of issues that they're going to raise. So one year was housing and hunger, sometimes it's teachers' school supplies. Anyways, they learn about what it means to vote. They learn about what it means to understand what an election is. And that's a 5th grade.
Exactly.
And that just feels really awesome to me that we have 3,000 students across the state, and hoping to grow that. We hope every 5th grader will be participating in voting their next kid governor. Exactly. To your point about
That's
democracy,
amazing.
Right?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I really sympathize with that idea. For some who may or may not know on the podcast, I don't speak about this much. When I was in 5th grade, I started my own business selling furniture because I was inspired by shows. And while I might not do the same work now, I got an idea how economics, how money works, how selling, how to make a bargain with someone, how to make trades, how our economic system in this country operates through that. But I was lucky to have the resources and the support around me to do that. Not all students are in that position.
Correct.
And you can apply that same principle to the idea of our, civic world in the United States, and to give the opportunities to children to really engage and to see and understand at a young age will help them way down the line. Yeah. Understand and interpret in a country where some feel that there's quite the lack of full education. Right. People who are past the stage where they are in school learning, who don't get how our system works and might be naive, and it's not their fault that they're in that position. It's simply because they lack the education at the time.
Correct. And there is, my own motto is, I want to make sure that every child, that New Hampshire Civics does everything we can to make sure that every person who graduates from a New Hampshire school has the knowledge, tools, and confidence they need to engage in the system. They can choose where they want to go, Owen. That is like autonomy 101, which is the other beautiful part of our country, right? I'm not going to dictate anything for you. And I want you, because to the point is, you need to have knowledge, but you also need to have confidence in that knowledge, that you understand the system and you understand how it works. Because that's when you can take your power back, all the way back to our conversation before of power over. Like, you have to give your power away for people to have power over you. Exactly. How do you take your power back?
This adds actually great into the next question I want to add. You have the experience of knowing and understanding this country, which is the issues of equity and equality. In this year's elections, the coming up very soon ones, how do you think equity will play a role in our voting?
Yeah, and I think that's a very important question that we need to really think about. Equity requires that we look at our structures and identify that it's not one size fits all for every person. And so when I think of young people wanting to go vote for the first time, for example, equity to me is knowing that I have to assume Owen is, and again, I know you have amazing parents who have given, but I have to assume that you maybe don't know how to register to vote. So like there's a new law that just passed in New Hampshire that says if you go to your guidance counselor or you go, that they have to tell you how to register to vote in New Hampshire. That's step one. That's literally step one.
Exactly.
Step two is, if you were, my niece is just turned 18 in May. She's in Massachusetts for college. How do I make sure she knows what an absentee ballot is, right? Like there's just so many pieces. But if you live in the town like myself, if I live in the town, I have an address, I am a homeowner, I don't need all that information. But equity is making sure that we are providing the people with the information they need to make the decisions. And I do think equity is going to play into this, because when you practice something that says, I'm going to give you more information, Owen, than I'm going to give Allyson, some people can perceive that as unfair or cheating or trying to shape the system. And that's really not it at all. It's providing you with what you need, and it's providing me what I need.
To that point, do you think there are people out there who are possibly trying to do the opposite of that, to instead try to make sure information doesn't get out to people? So it might increase or help the chances of certain people winning, or people that want to win their elections.
I mean, it's not unfair to make that statement, because again, if we look back over the history of our country, 48 and a half years at this.
Long.
Yeah. So
a little while back,
at the end of the day, we didn't want certain people to be able to read in this country upon its inception. And we didn't have a public education system, because knowledge is power. And so when you can keep people from having access to the knowledge, you can continue to have position over other people. And I don't know if it's one party or the other. I just know that it's a tactic.
Right.
And it's a tactic that unfortunately has been used successfully for hundreds of years in this country and across the world. When you strip people of the ability to have all the tools and resources they need to make the best decisions for themselves, that can be risky to some.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a democracy, at least the definition of it, is a form of government where the people elect and participate in it. So if you strip away that role, then is it really even a democracy in the first place?
It's the spirit of a democracy.
Not actually democracy in the name. Maybe some feel it's the idea, but really isn't.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we are navigating not a new time for this country, just an interesting time, once again, where we have to be aware that our elections are, for the most part, I would say overwhelmingly very sound. We have beautiful checks and balances in place in this country, Owen, and in our communities. And I will just lastly say, my little town in New Hampshire, my friend's a town moderator, and she will bring anyone in who has questions to show them exactly how something is done. The hardest part, and I'm going to say this to all the listeners who are going to do mail-in ballots, just get it in time.
Yeah.
Because you put the town people of people of the town, you're in a hard position when your ballot doesn't get there in time. Send it out so it gets there a week ahead of time.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, get it as soon as possible. And it's out right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get down and go grab yours, because it says really important. I know my brother did. Shout out. You don't have the opportunity to be there in person. I mean, the idea that we have an idea where you can mail in your ballot.
Absolutely.
So it just furthers, the idea that more people can participate.
Yes.
And I'm glad that, in a lot of ways, though some of these ideas can be divisive, I think they're brought in on both sides. But either way, the benefit of allowing to expand democracy and the ideals of it, and bringing more people in through easier access of voting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, we don't have no excuse absentee voting. And also, if you say, I don't live in the state or I go to college, like that is a legitimate excuse, right? So don't let that scare you from walking down to your local town clerk's office to get your ballot.
I want to bring up some stories about yourself here. Now, I assume you voted based off everything you said here. That
Yes.
you probably have voted before.
I have voted.
When was the first time you did?
So that's a very wonderful question. And I struggled because I thought, wow, I did what most young people do. Even though I was eligible to vote in my town election and my state election, I didn't vote until, I'm going to age myself, Bush-Kerry. Because I had just missed. So for Bush Gore, I turned 18 in 2021 and that election happened. So in 2001, I turned 18. That election happened in 2000. So I just missed that. So I had to wait 4 more years to cast my first ballot. And so I wish that I could go back to 18-year-old Allyson and say, I know all you think that matters is the presidential election, but I missed a governor election. I missed every town election because that's every year.
Right.
You have the chance to vote. So yeah, I'd like to go back and remind myself that more than just the president matters it matters, but more than that matters.
Yeah, I think it's something that isn't maybe promoted as much, that there are elections all the time, especially here in New Hampshire. We have quite an interesting system where there's constantly something going on politically. I feel like the political cycle never stops.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire, no matter what time of year. Right now you probably see the most amount of political ads. I feel like I'm always seeing something about voting on the TV or on YouTube for ads or on social media. Just
absolutely.
Geez.
And we're different. There was no YouTube when I was
right.
Because I'm getting to be an old lady now. And also I just think it's important to recognize also is sometimes life events happen. And the big life event that happened for me was 9/11 happened 3 weeks into my freshman year of college. So it did make me realize that I need to be involved. Right. We went to war. There's a lot that happened when I was a pretty young age and really made me feel like, oh my God, I can't just sit on the sidelines for this.
Right. Do you have any other possible political stories about voting or just in general from your work you've had that I think you could inspire, or it's just frankly interesting, goofy, silly?
Well, I think an inspiring one is that I wasn't raised in a household where we talked about politics or we talked about, my parents were amazingly hard workers who were blue collar workers. They went to work, they came home. I'm just a washed up jock. That was my life in high school. And so I didn't really think about larger issues. And then somehow, some way, I just got brought down this path. And that's why I said, you may not be wanting to be involved at this age, but don't give up on it, because all of a sudden I just got brought down this path where, again, 9/11 happened. And then I got a job that was working with local municipalities, and I had to understand their election cycle because we had vested interest in when they were going to renew our contracts or not, right? And I just kept going down this path. And next thing you know, I'm raising my hand to serve on boards. I'm raising my hand to run for office, right? And getting involved with Leadership New Hampshire and understanding the issues. And I will say that I was often the youngest one at the table, and that's really daunting in a multitude of ways. And you just got to stay with it because your voice matters.
Exactly.
And even if at the time it's oh, we feel really good because we have this young person here, or look at how great it is that she ran for office at such a young age, but actually we don't want you speaking. You don't get it. You do. I would say everyone gets it. And if you feel compelled to go sit on a local nonprofit board, go do it.
And how much better would that experience be if there were more people your age that were there with you? It wouldn't have felt so drowned out, such a generational split between you and the rest of the people you're serving with.
And it's New Hampshire. Even at my age now, I'm still one of the youngest ones on a lot of the boards I sit on, but it is more people than it ever has been around my age. And that's amazing because, to your point, it feels like a kindred spirit. You have other people that understand and had similar stuff. But I would say the goofy story was, because I can't not have this, is so at one point I did foolishly go move to Maine for grad school. And I wouldn't say it's goofy. I think it's important to sometimes recognize how democracy looks even in different states. And so Maine has statewide referendums. New Hampshire does not. So that means that there's ballot measures. And I happened to live in Maine when Yes on One was on the ballot, which was the passage of gay marriage. And I just remember working so hard for that campaign. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Owen, Maine was the first state in the United States of America to pass gay marriage via statewide vote. It didn't pass at the legislature, it didn't pass at the Supreme Court like it did in Massachusetts, or the legislature like it did in New Hampshire and Vermont. It passed by the people. And that, even to today, chokes me up to think about. That is the beauty of our country. I mean, it happened in a state, but the fact that that could even happen.
The people chose that decision.
That chose the rights.
Right, chose the rights of the people.
For their neighbors.
The people.
Yeah.
To have that care and compassion to do so. It's pretty incredible. And I think it is interesting to see in other states we don't see here in New Hampshire. And now with this coming election, we're seeing a lot of those types of questions being put on ballot. I think the biggest one right now is the idea of legalizing abortion, or the woman's right to choose or not, is becoming a very, it's a very divisive topic.
Yes.
Whether it should be or not, it is. And that, do you think that's going to have a difference in influencing votes? That now another issue to some is extremely important, whether honestly, whatever side you're on it, a lot of people have a lot to say about what's going on, and they're kind of going to bring themselves into the election with that notion. I don't know exactly how many states it is, but I know that many, including many purple swing states, are going to be having another major statewide. It's
recognizing what issue affects what you as a person. And of course, Owen, if we operated in the most idealistic world, like things that didn't directly impact you would still be something that you'd say, like, I need to. And you probably do. Most of us do. It's just like if we ranked it. The thing that can affect you the most, your personal safety and well-being, is going to take top priority. It just is. And then if it's like a family member or something that, like, we can talk about the environment, right? Where you can see it, and we're up here in New Hampshire, we're somewhat protected, but I can imagine right now in Florida, this is a pretty big issue, right? And so we can appreciate that, yes, the issues that matter to you, and I can't deny that, of course, big issues that matter to you as an individual are going to affect whether you feel like you want to turn out and vote or not. And again, in New Hampshire, it represents itself as a person. So we see that here in the governor race, who holds what belief, but to your point, in other states, it's an actual ballot measure. And I do think anytime you put issues that matter to you personally, you're going to get people that turn out more on both sides.
Sounds like you might believe this is a positive thing that states do this, or
I feel complicated about it. I really do, because again, everything's nuanced. I think sometimes I chuckle, and I don't know how I feel about this in general, but like I think about legalization of marijuana. If it was up to the people, would we have already legalized marijuana in the state of New Hampshire? I don't know. But it because it has to go through the whole legislative process here, which includes lobbying, which includes lobbyists, and different ways that it just creates a more politicized process. So sometimes I think it cleans up the process and it gets down to just the essence, the crux of it, right? Without all these like favors around it. And then sometimes I think these are really important decisions, and there isn't necessarily the knowledge or the understanding of the deep implications of something like this. And it's better to go through a legislative process so you can understand and kind of flush out the hard stuff and prevent potentially some unintended consequences from happening.
Exactly. I think, to leave it on that note, that no matter what is on the ballot, no matter who, any issue, the biggest role that you have in our democracy is to vote and to make your voice heard.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much, Allyson, on coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Owen. It's been a pleasure.
Youth in the Booth is recorded here at Concord Community Television Studios at Concord High School. If you're interested in seeing more from my podcast, you can check out my Instagram at Youth in the Booth Podcast, or check out the website www.youthinthebooth.com.